through the Transnational Literature Series here at Brookline Booksmith and your host for tonight's conversation. I want to open up the space by saying thank you for coming out tonight. The Booksmith has been around since 1961, and that's because of our wonderful community. Your support means we can keep having events like this, so thank you again. As you may know, tonight's event is part of our ongoing Transnational Literature Series, which focuses on stories of migration, the intersection of politics and literature, and works in translation. If you enjoyed tonight's event, please do check out our full events lineup online at brooklinebooksmith.com so you don't miss some of the amazing authors we have coming up this spring, both virtually and in store. You can also follow us on Instagram for updates. Toward the end of the event, we'll leave about 15 minutes or so for an audience Q&A, followed by a signing. We have copies of tonight's featured books available over at the register, and please take a moment to silence your cell phones. I think that takes care of the business end of things. Now, I'd love to tell you a little bit about our guest. Tonight I have the very great honor of introducing Haleh, Liza Gafori, here to present and celebrate the release of Water, a follow-up to her groundbreaking translations of Rumi and Gold. Poet and musician Haleh Liza Gafori translates a new selection of work by the great Persian mystic that will muster the soul and stir the spirit. Haleh is an Iranian-American translator, performance artist, poet, and musician born in New York City. Her work has been published by Harvard Review, the Brooklyn Rail, Columbia University Press, and many others. A recipient of a MacDowell Fellowship and an NYSCA grant, she presents the poetry of Rumi at universities and institutions, including Stanford University, Lincoln Center, and the Academy of American Poets. Here is the work, as the great poet Marilyn Hacker has said, of someone who is at once an acute and enamored reader of the original Farsi text, a dedicated miner of context and backstory, and best of all, a marvelous poet in English. And Rebecca Solnit writes that if you didn't know that Rumi could remind you of Patti Smith, if you haven't heard his work performed by a translator who, unlike most recent ones, can read him and sing him in the original, this Rumi presented by translator and rock star Haleh Liza Gafori is for you. I'm so pleased to have her here tonight, and now Haleh.
Hello, all. Thank you. I'm at a podium, so I probably won't be rocking out tonight, but but here we are. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for coming out. And I feel like starting with this poem. I'll just jump into it and things will unfold from here. A great love settled across the land. May it live on forever. Cynics found faith. May faith in love live on forever. In a land ravaged by its demons, compassion, wisdom, and intelligence rose again. May they lead us forever. My friend broke my heart, slammed the door, came back with compassion and remorse. May the change of heart last forever. You're all alone, savoring your wine, a lonely pleasure. Join us, be our guest forever. Like a torch, love's face fills the house with light. Cramped corners open to fields, may the fields expand forever. The grief-struck teach me, the love-drunk teach me. Enthralled by their bravery, their tenderness, their joy, and their triumph, I cast off my chains. May this freedom last forever. Sweet lips draw music from a hollow reed. Wind and sky sing. May the music echo on. The moon shines, orchards bloom, people find their souls. May the blossoming go on forever. Silence. Someone just tied the hands of my old life, and I'm drunk on love, thoughts stumbling. Let thought stumble off forever. I met Liza at Union Theological Society, and I was stepping into Padraig's retreat and doing a presentation on Rumi there, and Padraig Otuma, who was doing a weekend-long immersion on poetry and the you you. It was called you. So there were all these yous that he was looking at. And there's many yous in Rumi's poetry. Sometimes in this book, there's a couple of poems where he speaks from the voice of the divine, and the divine is speaking to us. So we are the you. And we get to hear what God is saying, according to Rumi in this moment. The unfathomable, he invites us, Rumi invites us, Maulana Jalaluddin Muhammad Ibn Hussein Balkhi invites us to envision, to activate our imagination in order to have a relationship with the divine. Because it is an unfathomable, beyond our five senses. And here we go. Didn't I tell you? Didn't I tell you? Didn't I tell you? There's no need to search for me. I am here, your friend, forever. In this life where the body perishes, where the mind constructs mirage after mirage, I am your water. I am your fountain of life, refreshing you, restoring sight. Didn't I tell you? If you turn from me in anger, if you flee for 100,000 years, you'll come back to me in the end. I am your end. I am your beginning. Didn't I promise you? If bandits strip you bare, if they steal your flames, I am your blazing fire. If you're a fish writhing on dry land, I am your sea, the calm waves that carry you. Shiny images, flashy things lure everyone. They can't give the contentment you seek. Didn't I tell you? I've built a home for you. Everything in its place. Wherever you go, it goes with you. Settle there. I've built a home for you. Everything in its place. Wherever you go, it goes with you. Settle there. Were you caught like prey? Did you fall in a trap? Didn't I tell you not to be fooled? Come close. I give you the power to fly. Didn't I tell you your heart is a lamp? It lights your way home. Your soul divine. It leads you back to me. So I've told you. And dear one, I'll tell you again. I wasn't always this crazed, this love-drunk, rapt and enchanted. Driven by reason, on guard, I was a hunter. Calculating, charming, strategic. I wanted answers. What is this? What is that? And what will they be tomorrow? Awe? I knew nothing of awe. And the awestruck, those free from the gnawing need to know the unknowable, they didn't impress me. Sit down with me. You're a smart one. Consider what I was and what I no longer am. I wanted to be kingpin, top dog, bigger than big. Like smoke, I climbed greedily, going nowhere, a crooked plume, wayward, drifting over parched land, thirsty for meaning. I didn't know when love hunts you down, when you fall prey to love, you only rise higher. Continuing my futile climb, I fell. I fell like a gem out of a pile of dirt. Not a hoarder of treasure. Treasure. It's really nice, right? I agree with you, yeah. It's so generous, too. I mean, there's such a generosity in his poetry. Even when he's sort of, sometimes demanding and chastising, as a preacher sometimes does. It's always with tremendous generosity, and it's always with a confessional aspect too, to say, I've been there, and this is where I was, and this was my transformation. مرده بودم، زنده شدم، گریه بودم، خنده شدم، دولت عشق آمد و من دولت پاینده شدم. I was dead, I came to life. I was tears, I am laughter. Love found me, shook me, woke me to the eternal love within. And so that is always the process, and it happens again and again and again and again. In Gold, for instance, he says, I saw myself sharp as a thorn. I fled to the softness of petals. I saw myself sour as vinegar. I mixed myself with sugar. An aching eye, seeing through pain, a stewing pot of poison. I was both. Reaching for the antidote, I touched compassion. I touched mercy. I was a cup holding only the dregs. I poured in the water of life. Raw and callow, I followed the ones already cooked by love's fire. In the dirt, on the path of love, I found the medicine that ensouls sight. My armor thinned to a silken scrim. I sifted the soil that gives vision to the blind. Love said, yes, you have arrived, but don't think it's your doing. I am wind, you are fire. I stoke your flames. I stoke your flames. So even after all of that, I fled to the softest petals. I mixed myself with sugar. I poured in the water of life. I reached for compassion and mercy. And that confession, I was an aching eye seeing through pain, a stewing pot of poison. Die idee por dad budam, kosea por zah budam. It's such surprising, but there he is. And then again, going round and around and back to love and back to love and back to love. And love stokes his flames again and again and again and again. Let's look at another one now, again, going back to water. My heart breaks when I look out on the old turning wheel of the world. My heart breaks when I look out on the old turning wheel of the world, the trickery, the snares, the deception. My heart breaks when I see pain planted in the soil. What will it yield but more pain? What the world has called work, I work hard not to do. Man, what kind of lightning are you setting farms on fire? What kind of cloud are you raining down stones? What kind of hunter caught in your own trap? A thief stealing from your own house? You're 60 years old, you're 70 years old, and you're still uncooked, still won't let love's flames near, won't let them burn you up. Enthralled by stuff and status, the crown, the turban, the king's beard, thorns pricking your hands, and where is the flower? Gazing in the mirror, you tilt your hat like a crescent moon. Where is the light? If once, for one day, you could sense the beloved's boundless love, you'd be a friend, a good friend. I swear to the essence of that love that loves us all, if you let it intoxicate you, kindness will reign, benevolence will reign. Love is your true prince, your true sheikh. Take a step towards your true master, and you're no longer a horseman in an army, you're the head of the cavalry. Different cavalry. Hold on to love's hand. Seek love's aid. Feel its warmth. Nothing else will save you from the ache of separation. On a desolate night, remember love. Feel dawn breaking within. How can night persist under a rising sun? While you sleep, love sits at your bedside, praying for you, weeping for you. If I say more, the world will burn. And when Attar saw Maulana Rumi, the 9-year-old, apparently, Attar was a kind of a poetic father figure, a mystic who was writing before Rumi, and he was also an herbologist, and he was in Nishapur, and when the family was moving across the Middle East, partly because his father wanted to get a job in a bigger mosque, but also partly because the Mongols were marching across Central Asia. So anyway, when they got to Nishapur, Attar saw Rumi outside and said, he's gonna set the world on fire. So this is a sort of echo of that when he says, if I say more, the world will burn. And of course, he's talking about, often talking about the old self, the old ways, the old trap. He says, the old trap of my old ways, and the old trap of our old ways. This poem speaks to the warmongers of his time when he says, Chegune barri achar ke kesht misuzi, chegune abri achar ke sang mibari. What kind of lightning are you setting farms on fire? What kind of cloud are you raining down stones? And then he goes into that, enthralled by stuff and status, the crown, the turban, the king's beard, on and on, right? So there's the you there, so the shifting yous. He says, seekers on a pilgrimage to the house of God. Where are you going? Where are you? Your beloved is here. Come back. Your beloved lives right next door. Your beloved is right behind the wall. Why are you wandering round and round, lost in the desert? Look beyond form. Look into the faceless face of love. You are that love. You are the house, the dwelling place of love and its maker. You've traveled 10 times to see the house of God. You've described it in detail, all its exquisite features. Now tell me about the God inside. For once, enter your own house. Climb to the roof. If you saw the garden, where are the flowers? If you swam from God's sea, where is your soul's pearl? Searching for treasure, you've endured so much trouble. Hear this truth. Hear this truth. You are the treasure. I'm sorry. Yes, that's right. No, that is right. Let's do that again. Hear this truth. You are the treasure and the veil hiding it. I'll never tire of you. I'll never stop thirsting for you. That's my only fault. Wrap me in compassion, in your untiring compassion. You are my haven here and beyond. I called on the water bearer again and again. I drank from his jug. I drank from his water skin. I grew thirstier with every drink, exhausting them all. Smash the jug, slash the water skin, clear the path. I'm heading for the boundless ocean. How long have my tears turned the earth to mud? How long has my sadness darkened the sky with smoke? How long has my broken heart grieved its brokenness? How long have my lips complained to the King of Kings? Go to the ocean. Go to the ocean, I tell myself. Go to the ocean. Waves of purity, waves of serenity roll in. Wash away my old self, old home, the old trap of my old ways. Last night, in one great wave, the water of life crashed in the courtyard of my house. The flood swept my harvest away. Smoke rose from my heart. My grain and hay burned to ash. I'm not grieving. I'm not grieving. Why should I grieve? The halo around the moon is enough for me, and I can't eat sorrow. Beloved, you entered my heart, your image aflame. Your fire blazed through my head, burning my hat, my turban, my crown. Listen, you said, Beshno, Beshno. Listen, you said. Listen to the music. Though you might lose what you call dignity, though you might stain your reputation, dance, dance, dance the whirling dance. Beloved, your love is my dignity. Your love is my honor. Knowing you is enough. The light of your midnight face outshines the dawn. I know the army of sadness is near, but its sadness can't overtake me. My army of yearning, my army of love has reached heaven. My heart regrets every ode I write. I've said too much, I know. And then again, the falcon dives down, seizes my heart, urges me on. I'm thinking. He speaks a lot about thinking. To brood is to wander through a dark grove where one sheep strays and 100 wolves follow. Why did I make brooding my vocation when awe was an option? Thought spinner, mull the wine of wonder. آب حیات عشق را در رگ ما روان کن روان کن روان کن آینه صبور را ترجمه شبانه کن شبانه کن ترجمه شبانه کن ده به کفم یگانگی تفرقه را یگانه کن ای عشق خردم شکار تو تیر زدن شعار تو شست دلم به دست کن جان مرا نشانه کن آب حیات عشق را در رگ ما روان کن روان کن روان کن. That's the opening poem in gold when he says, Ab Hayat, the water of life. He says, let love, the water of life, flow through our veins. Let a love-drunk mirror steeped in the wine of dawn translate night. You who pour the wine, put the cup of oneness in my hand and let me drink from it till I can't imagine separation. Love, you are the archer, my mind is your prey. Carry my heart and make my existence your bullseye. And in water, Ab is the word, water. We have Ab Hayat all over the place. Love is, the water of life is one form that love takes in his poetry. So he says, the world's river stopped flowing. Season of warm rains return. Let the river flow again. In the depths of the soul, there is a gushing spring, invisible to the eye. Love, the water of life, bubbles up from its depths, no end to it. Let that spring feed the world's river. Where there is water, there is bread, my dear, but you can't squeeze water from bread. You are a guest on this earth, not a beggar. Don't trade the water of your soul for a morsel of bread. End to end, the whole material world is less than a single morsel. Greed for crumbs dries up the river. From a placeless place, beyond earth and sky, the water of life flows. The sky, its pitcher, the earth, its cup, the source, a boundless ocean. He says, side note, love is an ocean. No borders, no shores, right? This is the shoreless, boundless sea that he speaks of, this divine ocean of love, one vision of the divine. So he says, right, he says, end to end, the whole material world is less than a single morsel. Greed for crumbs dries up the river. From a placeless place beyond earth and sky, the water of life flows. The sky, its pitcher, the earth, its cup, the source, a boundless ocean. Don't delay. Leap from this pond into that ocean again and again, again and again. There, the fish is immortal. That ocean, the vision of that ocean, restores the light in our eyes. Its waters run down the roof, flow through the spout, feed the garden, our faces, the blooming flowers. Dates from the garden's palms feed the unborn Savior inside the Holy Mother, inside of you. At sea, in that ocean, you find ease, you find joy. And the frantic watchman in you, shaking his rattle and banging his stick, falls silent. Boundless waters guard the fish. I love that poem. Yeah. And you know, the fish is in a way partly on one level the human mind that is shaking its rattle and banging its stick. And then also the recognition that within us is that aspect of mind. You know, in another poem in Gold, he says, once I lived in a prison of circumspection and calculation. I thought I was being prudent and wise. Right? And so this part of mind, but then this other aspect of us, the unborn Savior of us, inside the Holy Mother that's in all of us, the divine that's in all of us. And he asks us to birth it. And I'll use that verb, birth it. So, yeah, was I going to say something about that? Oh, boundless waters guard the fish. So let's talk about this mind for a moment. And again, this is another poem where he's speaking from the divine, again, to us. So we are the you. And he says, why are you ravaged by a single thought? Dragged down, sinking inward, heavy with sorrow. Piece by piece, I stitch you together. Why has one doom-ridden thought torn you into 100 pieces? You packed your belongings and left the kingdom of my love. Now you wander alone. I made the earth your cradle, but you won't relax. You lie there, cold and wooden, ill at ease. I unleashed water from stone. You marched off towards dry land. Now you're hard as granite. Child of flesh and bone, you are a child of soul. Love is your trade, your mission, your calling. Why do you busy yourself with so many other tasks? In one house, you were wounded 100 times. You keep circling the house. You keep eyeing the door. In another house, you tasted 100 kinds of sweetness. You trusted none of them. Bitter, you never grew sweet. Dear one, dear one, dear one, I want to see you love drunk. If my words make you vigilant and wary, I'll say no more. Here I am, gazing at you in silence. Open your eyes to the love in my eyes. Drink it down. Again, the generosity, right? It's just an incredible, incredible sage, friend, mystic, you know, traversing 8 centuries to touch our hearts. And yeah. Of دشت را پر هله پر جور کن. Sun in the heart, sun in the soul. The sun in the sky pales before you. Sun in the heart, sun in the soul. Fill the house with light again. Fill our friends with joy. Blaze in the eyes of enemies. Blind them till they see. Sun in the heart. Sun in the heart with your blazing love. Blaze in the eyes of enemies. Blind them till they see. Make the gardens green again. Adorn every farm and meadow with fruit and flower. Rise over the mountains, ripen the grapes. Make rubies of stones. Make rubies out of stones. Sun in the heart, sun in the soul. Doctor, beacon, take our hands. Use our hands. Cure the ill and ailing. Sun in the heart, sun in the soul. Criminal to let clouds hide you. Unveil your face. Brighten our dim world. And speaking of our dim world, here is a poem where he complains. And you can watch the progression through the poem, because in these ghazals, he's moving. Sometimes he starts the poem, he's talking to Shams, and then he's talking to the divine. Sometimes he starts the poem, and he's commanding us, Mandish, Mandish, don't think, quit pouring thoughts like kerosene on everything fresh and green, burning into the root. Be a fool, drunk on love and soaked in awe, till dry reeds are sweet as sugar cane. A lion leaps out of his cage, a man leaps out of his mind. Bravery is delicious madness, not some circumspect, cagey thought, sly and ungiving. Why scheme for a morsel? Curb your insatiable hunger, and you won't be seduced by a trickster, nor reduced to being one. When greed groans, I play deaf. So I just wanted to bring that as an example. That's a poem from Gold, but as an example where he starts with the imperative and commands us, don't think, and then the progression of the poem, and he ends confessing, and when greed groans, I play deaf. So he's right there with us. And here's another poem where you see a progression. He says, world of water and mud. And by the way, I do need to say this because there's a donkey in the poem. And the donkey in Persian literature is a symbol of ignorance. And of course, in Rumi's poetry, the ignorance means hasn't awakened to love. When he says, I am a child and love is my teacher, waking me from ignorance, right? This is what he speaks. So, and he has, he had no insistence really on academic certifications, or that wasn't his index of, that he used to judge someone's intelligence or anything. He brought Salahuddin the goldsmith and said, this is your teacher, when he didn't want to preach anymore, because of course he was a preacher to begin with and had thousands and thousands of people coming to hear him speak. He was very charming, very magnetic, and at a certain point he was done, and he moved from preaching to poetry, and he says, music has climbed into the pulpit. I will sell my tongue now and buy 1,000 ears. And then he was listening and dancing and whirling and whirling and whirling, and the poetry was coming and coming. Like, for instance, when he says, this is the first poem in Water. چون نمایی آن رخ گل رنگ را از طرب در چرخاری سنگ را بار دیگر سر برون کن از حجاب از برای عاشقان دنگ را تا که عاقل بشکند فرهنگ را تا که آب از عکس تو گوهر شود تا که آتش واهلد مرجنگ را. And so he would just go, and you hear the gol rang ra, sang ra, jang ra, farhang ra, the rhyme at the end, and that way of the ghazal spins and comes back to the refrain. And he was often composing while whirling. So that's side notes. But I was getting to the donkey, and here we go. World of water and mud, world of water and mud. Ever since I've known you, I've known trial, torment, and tribulation. You are pasture for grazing donkeys, not the abode of Jesus. What am I doing in a pasture for grazing donkeys? Why am I here? World of water and mud, you tied my hands and feet. Why? So I notice my hands and feet. So I cherish them. So I meet my liberator. World of water and mud, only when the feast was spread did you pour the fresh water. Only when the feast was spread did we taste the sweet water. World of water and mud, God called you a cradle. Infant blossom, how do you mature so fast? The breeze touches me and I open. Petals fall, fruit ripens. While here I am, raising my arms to the sky, praising the one who made the sky, but why insist on above and below when my source dwells in every here and every there? Why ask where of everywhere? Turn off the mind, turn off the tongue, enter nothingness. See things through nothing's eyes. So we see how he moves. He said, you're not this isn't the abode of Jesus. But then by the end of the poem, my soul dwells in every here and every there. And please help me turn this mind off, full of narratives and dogma and judgments. And, the spinning. He says, Pambe vasfos, birun kon zegush, ta begushat ayad as gardun chorush. Take the cotton of the mind's doom-ridden chatter out of your ears. Hear the booming voice of the heavens. Hear the roar of fate. Hear the ruckus the muse makes. Well, I think we're going to move to questions. Oh, we have 5. Okay, good. So we have 5 minutes, and so I will share another. Do you want to hear another song, like a short song?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah. Now shiram ke ba dushman barayan mara in bas ke man ba man barayan. Now shiram ke ba dushman barayan mara in bas ke man ba man barayan. تو خاک پای عشقم تو یقین دان کز این گل چون گل سوسن برایم. تو خاک پای عشقم تو یقین دان کز این گل چون گل سوسن برایم. Hey.
Else tearing up a little bit? That was stunning. Oh my gosh. So we're gonna do an audience Q&A. I will bring this mic around so everyone can hear you. Does anyone have any questions to start?
I just want to say that I think I'm going to take up twirling so I can empty my mind.
Yeah, right. That's great.
It's very beautiful, thank you. You referred to gold several times, like the gold. Is that a manuscript? I just don't know what it is.
Oh yeah, Gold is the first book. So do you have copyright there? So Gold came out in 2022.
Oh, it's your book?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm,
Got it.
Yeah, and I the poems are in dialogue with each other. They're very different books. I say in the intro of Water that Water is a bit of a moodier book. I say it's Gold's moody cousin. Gold came out in 2022.
Thank you.
That is some important context if you don't know. Any other questions? Okay, perfect.
Can you talk a little bit about your translation process? I know every translator has their own process, so I'm just curious to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure, yeah. Well, it somewhat varies poem to poem, but when I started out in 2016, there was a poem on my desk of translation, and it's the penultimate poem in gold, If Wheat Sprouts from My Grave, and If You Bake Bread from It, that poem. And I had a translation of it on my desk, and I looked at it and I wondered, is that what he said, in this stanza or that stanza? And so I looked back at the Persian at that point and I thought, no, and I wanted to try it out. And I gave it a go and translated it. And that was the first one that I translated in 2016. And it was such a pleasure. Translation is like solving a puzzle. It's also a way of being inside of language without necessarily having to generate the poem, the entire poem, because it's there. So, that also is a great pleasure, just to be able to, be involved in a kind of collaborative project also with such a great poet. And so then I tried another one, and I tried another one. And I was also very much in conversation with my mother. My mother and I would sit and read some of these poems out loud. Sometimes my mother would send me a ghazal, and she'd be like, what do you think of this one? Because in Divan Shams of Tabriz, there's over 3,200 poems. So one of the big parts of the process is picking which ones you're gonna take from this giant, sea of poems. And so, that was a lot of back and forth. She would send me poems, I would look for poems. I would look sometimes at translated poems and then go back and see what the original said, and then sometimes rework them. I was very pleased when I would find poems that I loved that I had never seen translated. And so picking was about, this poem speaks to me, or it delights me, somehow this image startles me, or it's speaking to our times. And then I would just dig in. I would read it, we would read it aloud. Sometimes I'd have to look up words in the dictionary because sometimes, these are 800-year-old poems. Sometimes the words are obscure. Sometimes he makes up words. He's also doing a lot of wild word play, and there's a kind of acrobatic syntax sometimes because he's writing in form, in meter. And so just kind of like figuring that stuff out was part of the process, like what is going on here in this line. And sometimes Iranians will gather and talk about a poem and they'll argue about one couplet and the meaning of a couplet, just like people would on any poem essentially, or when there's an elusive aspect to the poem or to the line. And so those involved interpretations. So those would, and as many lines do, but some of them are very straightforward, and it's just a straight shot, But if it involves some kind of investigation, I want to look at other poems in his body of work and get clues from those. Also, what does this word mean in the context of Sufi mysticism? That's really important. So digging into cultural context is very important. So all of these things come into play. Yeah, thank you.
Question, I'll come around.
Oh yeah, so I think she's gonna go, and then.
Well, I can speak. You mentioned a lot.
Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll be right back to you.
You mostly were talking about the constructive forces of the universe, light, love.
Yes.
Water is the source of life.
Right.
But as we all know, there are a lot of destructive forces of the world. And he was a live creature, man. He lives here and there. And there were a lot of wars at his
That's
time.
right.
and he has to run away from battles,
That's right.
and he suffered.
That's right.
And desperation was as real for him as hope.
That's right.
So, did all these like negative, bad things
Yeah.
find his way into his poetry? But only as I listen to you, it's just like something to overcome. But can you tell us a little bit more about his life? So we can maybe understand better how he, found his way out of real life to the transcendence. And also the second question is, can you name other mystical poets in other traditions who would be close to him, like John the Cross in Spain, or Rilke, or Kabir in India? But these are different kind of mysticism, and Rilke is a mystic also, and the absolute, the one, would speak to him in the same way as he is the one with talking to Rumi. So that's my two questions.
Okay. Well, there's lot in those questions. So just to start out with, yes, he did, as I said before, they were traveling across the Middle East for 11 years ahead of Mongol invasions, and he heard all about the horrors. So he was very, very aware of the brutality, and he was also at this time traveling through the gorgeous, Middle East with the sky brimming with stars and the orchards, and we can imagine how fragrant they were 800 years ago. So there was incredible natural beauty, the choirs of birds, and there were these horrors. And Genghis Khan piling, skulls into pyramids and ransacking villages and so on. And actually also Attar, his teacher, so this is a mystic I would name that is in the tradition. Attar, I mentioned before, Attar apparently was killed by the Mongols. So this poetic predecessor, who was a father figure to him and was such a lover too, was killed by the Mongols. So he was completely aware and forlorn. And as he says, what am I doing in this field of pasture of grazing donkeys? But he's one of these types of people who is interested in alchemy and transformation. So that is sort of his thrust. One could say, the horrors exist, I accept them, and I'm going to work around them, and that's, something. And his desire was, I want to get rid of this overthinking mind, or quiet it as much as I can, and I'm going to try. And also, any transformation that's happening within my being, the transformation that I'm doing from moving from some kind of greedy aspect of self into a more giving and more compassionate aspect of self, is something that I can see happening on larger levels and happening on others, happening on a global or cultural scale. He did believe that. I mean, the first poem I started with, a great love has settled across the land, may it live on forever. In a land ravaged by its demons, compassion, intelligence, wisdom rose, may they lead us forever. I mean, there's a hope and optimism and a desire to transform, and I think that's because he experienced the possibility of it within himself. And so he thought, well, if I could do it, maybe it can happen on more levels, and that's my mission. And that was his mission. Child of flesh and bone, you are a child of soul. Love is your trade, mission, and job. So he was very aware of the brutality, but he was absolutely committed to the notion that love is a palpable force, and that we should be constantly devoted to the process of uncovering it and cultivating it within ourselves. He was married to that, And in terms of his own life as a person, he was a very nice guy. So he was writing letters for the students that needed help. He was talking to kings and trying to get them to help, or the Sultan, trying to get the Sultan to help out the poor students. you know, he was a friend, good person. His students loved him, you know. He was a giving and kind person, so he was living it in his own way. I'm sure that he sometimes shouted and lost his temper, but you know, but he was generally a nice human being, and you can see that in his letters, you know, and you can see that in the way people were responding to him. So that, you know, and in terms of poets, I would just say within the tradition, Attar and Sadi, you know, were two poets in the mystical tradition.
But you know, for me.
Oh. No, I'm sorry, we're gonna get to a couple other questions, and if we have
Thank
time,
you.
we'll
Yeah.
circle back.
My question is like, what one poem you can read for us for someone who doesn't believe in love anymore?
Oof. Wow.
That's a stumper.
I mean, we are in a difficult time. And
Yes,
if
we are.
Yes, and if they hope is born of love, how you can like read one poem and get someone that's like, love is still here, love can solve whatever, like, you give them hope again.
Right. Well, I mean, I would think that it's a body of work that does that. You know what I mean? I would think that it's right at this moment. I can't necessarily think of one poem that captures that completely, but I think that his body of work calls us again and again and gives us hope. It's something, you know, I started in 2016 eating his poetry. He says, eat my poetry. And he says, eat it because he knows that it's something that has to come into the being, and it has to come into the being again. You eat bread every day, right? So it's the daily action of, you know, this experience that brings us to love. And I don't know, it's a tough time right now. It's a very sad time, and horrors abound. Horrors abound. And yet, you know, as James Baldwin said, you know, this world is held together by a certain number of people that are loving fiercely, you know. And maybe that's true or not, but, you know, it's also actually led by sociopaths. So we're dealing with that. And you know what? Rumi speaks to the sociopath. He speaks to the imperious ego that is lost in self. You know, he says, you who are drunk on self. Union is your destiny. Dissolution is your destiny. Taste the rapture now. Come and dance. You know, so he's also always making these kind of friendly, again, invitations. But he's speaking very seriously to that aspect of us that is so self-centered, and we are in a culture that has historically been hyper-individualist and hyper-militarist, and we are reaping what we've sown for 40 years. I mean, everything that we see now really was like being planted in a profound way 40 years ago. Also before, plenty before, but I would say a lot, you know, was going on in the 80s that was paving the way for this horror.
So if you hadn't done it, I would have asked you to sing a ghazal in Farsi, so thank you so much for doing that.
Oh, yeah.
The world rightly declaims Rumi and Hafez. Sadi de Shiraz is really special.
Right,
for me.
Hafez, of course, yeah.
Are you considering translating some of the other poets?
Well, you know, someone asked me that recently, and I thought, well, you know, I mean, maybe someday I might turn to Hafez. At this point, I feel very much inside of Rumi's world, and I feel that there is another book after this one. But we'll see. And I may turn to Hafez someday. Hafez is more challenging.
We've got a couple more here.
Well, your singing was so beautiful, and I wonder if you've ever thought about why it is that Americans don't sing. When you think about it, you know, we have choirs, but it feels like the people who studied and loved Rumi, that's part of the music, is part of it.
Well, it certainly was a big part of Rumi's. I mean, he was listening to music and composing to the beat of a drum. And so there are a lot of vocalists who sing his poetry. That's very true. A lot of Iranian vocalists, classical Iranian vocalists, will pull out couplets from a ghazal and sing them because they just lend themselves to song because they were written to the beat of a drum. And contemporary American free verse has its own rhythm and its own music. And of course, it can be sung sometimes. It's actually Terence Hayes' poems were just put to an opera. Some opera singers just sang some of his poems. So it
I
happens.
just wanted to add one thing, that there's a Rumi poem, Meet Me There, and I don't know it by heart, but as far as having hope,
Right.
a place where there are no rights and wrongs, and I can't quote it, but it says, meet me there and we'll figure out this world.
Right. Well, it's an interesting poem. It's a slightly off translation, and
Oh, maybe.
it's okay though. But I mean, one of the things I want to say, and Kalminsky, one of the translators, talks about this a lot, this particular piece, and wonders why Americans are so attached to this one poem. But there's a slightly problematic aspect to that poem because he's calling us to the field of non-duality, right? Great. We love the field of non-duality, but the point is that this sensation of non-duality comes through a sense of love and reverence and care. And so it's not an instant, like, just add water. It's amoral. There's a deciphering of like, oh, we're dumping 1.3 million pounds of bees into the Hudson River. That is wrongdoing, right? We're dropping people in Iraq. That is wrongdoing. So it's actually a tricky translation. And someday I'll deal with that poem because it's important. And the sense of beyond right and wrong, that is a place, right? But it's really like we get to this place of non-judgment within us and so on, but it doesn't mean that we don't decipher and that we're actually not making better decisions about our own worlds. And I think sometimes that poem, it gets sort of used in weird ways to sort of allow us to be apathetic, about what's happening and what's been done. So it's tricky, but it's also beautiful.
And hopeful, a little hopeful, I mean, the picture is.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of hope. There's many visions. Yeah, many visions of beauty in his poetry, no doubt about it. And I'm not trying to burst the bubble on that field. It's real. And, we mention it a lot in these books, but it just, that way that he used the words right doing and wrong doing is like a little off. Because there is right doing and wrong doing. But he says, for instance, when we die, we marry eternity. I'll just read, because this brings us to the non-duality. Well, I can't find it right now, but he says, the secret revealed, God, us, all one. And he says in that poem, there's no good and no bad there, right? So we're not going to be punished in hell. I mean, that's not what he thinks. But he does think, while we're here on this earth, let us activate, I have to say, our best selves. When he says in a poem, I'm not here to be ignoble, why not seek my noblest self? So there's that simultaneity of the acceptance, the 360-degree embrace of creation of our brutal and beautiful world, the acceptance of who we are right now in the now, the mess that we sometimes are, the doom-ridden thinking that we sometimes have. Embrace it all. It's all divine. And at the same time, we attempt to just kind of gently tweak ourselves in order to be in a more compassionate, expansive state. So the simultaneity of this quest, it is both very loving in the here and now and also hopeful for evolution. That was a mouthful, sorry.
Hello. Two things. I think spring is here.
Yes.
For her. For the person who's lost faith and love. You should read that at the end when I'm done with my other question, because I think that is the ultimate.
Oh,
I really
nice.
do. It's a sideways way of getting to love, but very beautiful and profound. And so my question for you is, you've been in communion with this poet since 2016, and I am wondering if you can say, what is the way in which you've been most deeply touched, or what is the gift, the core, the smallest, most sacred gift that you've been given by this teaching, the thing that you will take with you always and that you would turn to in its humility? Because I know that it's so vast, but I think in a communion like this, it's sometimes just one word or one orientation that is where the truth touches you most deeply, and I want to know what that is for you.
Well, what's coming to me in this moment is Andar Goshayesh Adam on Ordeha Goshud. At the doorway to emptiness, all knots come loose. And also, related to that, love opens the clenched body, lets the soul breathe. And this notion of allowing the space and the silence in the mind, that is the emptiness. Allowing ourselves that and allowing the knots to untie at times. It's so important that this poetry brings us to a state of relaxation. So that's my biggest takeaway, because I was very anxiety ridden as a child and adolescent. And so the path of my life has been untying knot after knot in the psyche. So when he speaks of Pambe of Asvos, and the doom-ridden thinking and the chattering of the mind, I know what he's talking about. And so coming to this silence, and he calls us to it at the end of poems, Chomush, Chomush. Chomush means turn off the mind, turn off the tongue, and allowing that spaciousness and allowing the knots to untie. Because in our relaxed state, when we are frantic, the frantic being is tough. Is tougher on themselves and on the world. So, if mysticism is doing its work, it brings us to relaxation and laughter, and that is that untying. So that's a lot. Yeah, that's it. That's what it is. And shall I read Spring is Here? This one I don't think I memorized. But you're talking about Spring is Here, musky, fragrant, yes. Okay. Okay, there. Spring is here, and it sort of is here. We thought it was. It was kind of.
It's a Boston spring.
Yeah, it's a Boston spring, exactly. Spring is here. Fragrant, musky spring is here. The beloved is here. The soul of souls is here. The one who welcomes everyone is here. Wine is here. The wine of dawn is here. Wine that floods the soul with joy is here. The cupbearer fills everyone's cup. Clarity is here. Stones in the river pulse with sunlight. The cure is here. The cure for every ill is here. The friend who soothes the ache is here. The healer is here. The healer who's felt every shade of feeling is here. Dance is here. The whirling dance is here. The eternal bond and glorious breeze are here. Poppies, basil, and the tulip's stunning eyes are here. One is here. One who makes someone of no one is here. The bright moon that clears the haze is here. The heart stirring all hearts to laughter is here. The beloved is here. I tell you, the soul of souls is here and never left. It's our eyes that come and go. Be silent now. Let silence speak. Surrender the syllables you count on your fingers, poet. The river of countless messages is here.
I didn't hear your introduction, but I wanted to ask if you teach or read outside the United States, and whether you know a translator who goes by the name of Yaqub, whose Rumi society I belong to.
Oh, well, I do sometimes, yeah, I've taught in Istanbul and at his, in the town where he preached in Konya in Istanbul. And I'll be in England this summer and Germany as well. And Yakub, someone sent me a Facebook message. Yakub, where is he living? Yes. Yeah, we were in contact, yes. Yeah, and you said that he's part of a community.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Society and teaching.
Yeah, thank you, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I will speak
Okay, yeah,
Okay, we'll do one more.
okay.
Thank you. Excuse me if my words don't come together so eloquently. My baby doesn't let me sleep very much. But I wanted to thank you for your presentation. I think hearing the context and the way that you weave your knowledge of the history with the poetry is really enlightening. I guess my question follows up on what this lady had asked as well. And so in studying all of his works and in learning about the context and about his history, he was a teacher, and so in a way you've become his student. And so I just wonder if you don't mind speaking more about it, but how these teachings have really infiltrated your life and have changed the way that you approach the world, and how you've integrated that into your daily practice.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll briefly say, because I know our time is limited now, but I just feel very much that, there is a philosophy that pulses through this poetry, and it's a very, it's a wonderful, and I just by, digesting it, absorbing it, and attempting to transmit it, in English, I have changed. There's no doubt about it. I have changed tremendously. It's just, as I said, made me a more relaxed person and made me a more grounded, calm, and actively loving. Love is a verb. So how are the many ways that we can love? These are questions that became the focus of my life through this poetry. And they weren't, say, when I was a child. Although I always, I wanted to give. Like, as a child, I would draw these little flowers when I was in first grade and hand them out. And I think I'm still doing that. I'm just, it's the same person. So, but he's given me texts and images, and dazzling text that I can relish in, and that's been a joy. I'm a happier person. Yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for all of your engaging questions. We will now have a signing. There are books in the back, both gold and water. We're going to have her up here, and the signing line will come around here. It's a celebration, so we do have some bubbly. We have some champagne and some non-alcoholic drinks as well that are really good, and I hope you will partake. I'll be over there in a second to help get them all open. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight.